So, as most of you, I'm sure, know, we've been doing the
Double green shopping bag.
double green shopping bag sew along, which is a pattern that Janet created. Still having focus issues.
Oh boy.
So annoying. That Janet created on accident.
It's true. In 2009.
Brenda copped out. She's like, "Nope." I said I can't watch two. Two kids.
Oh, not two at a time. She
Not
can't do
two
two at a
at a time.
time.
Um, okay, so sorry, distracted by comments. So Janet's double green shopping bag pattern she created by accident, by just trying to make some for herself and then just having so much fun and getting so many compliments, that she ended up putting it in a pattern.
Yes, I
It's
did.
more a instructional booklet than a pattern. I will say that, just to be clear, right?
Well, it's really a pattern. It's just not pattern pieces.
Right.
So
It's
yeah,
all squares and rectangles and easy just to tell you what to cut out, opposed to cutting out a pattern piece that's a square or a rectangle
yeah,
and then put it.
exactly. Yeah, there's no unusual shapes. Everything's a square or a rectangle. So perfect. Yeah. So we've been having lots of fun. Last week we went through some of the options to get ready. And then I hope you didn't do what I did because I started to clip something, and then you let me know we were running out of time anyway. And my brain was going, that's not right. And it wasn't. So I'm going to recover from that today and show you
So you're
exactly.
saying you were making a mistake on your own, not from the direct.
Yes, when
Okay.
we were just before we left, I said, "Oh, you're gonna clip this
Oh yeah.
here," and then I went, "Yeah, I'm not sure." So we
So we
stopped
need a
there.
retractment
Yeah, yeah.
a little bit.
So,
Okay.
so no clips should be made at this point, but you should have if you pieced your basic bag together like you see here pieced, then you should top stitch down the seam allowances on either side. And so that's what I did. So that you should have done. So if you're going to underline it, you'll have it underlined at this point, and you'll have all the top stitching done on the piecing. So you have your basic two squares, 14 and a half tall by 13 and wide, and you're going to want to do some serging. Now, last week I also said, oh, I'm not going to do any serging. Well, I changed my mind. And this is the reason I changed my mind.
Because you can.
I know that's true. And nobody can stop me. But
That's
the
also true.
but the reality is as I was going through all the bags and showing you and pulling them out of my stash and everything, I realized there was fraying happening where I didn't expect it and I didn't like it. And the bag lasted 3 times longer than I thought it was going to when I decided not to serge it. So I've decided to serge. So I have serged the tops. So we're going to serge the top of the front and the top of the back, those two 14 and a half by 13-inch squares. Okay. Then I serged my handles along the long side. No need to do the short side, but do the long side. And then your top and bottom piece, the tops of each of those or the very ends of each of those rectangle pieces, you want to serge those as well because they just get turned over and hemmed down. We can't really turn under the quarter of an inch like we would on a garment because this is denim and because sometimes we've underlined it. So it would be really bulky up there and it's just not necessary, especially if you can go ahead and serge finish that edge. I also pressed over a half an inch on each of those so that make up the whole top of the bag. Okay, so then if everybody's with me so far, let me see if I've forgotten to call out anything. No. Okay. So then you're going to attach any pockets or decoration that you want on the outside. And I went ahead and did that. So what you're going to see here, and you're going to need to point the camera down because I think it's better.
Sure.
You know, because when I hold things up, gets wobbly and everything.
Seriously.
On your feet,
I think
lose your seat.
I think that this was a setup. She just was trying to get me out of my seat. I've been set up by a dog.
Okay, so remember we talked about what we affectionately call the butt pocket. So we cut one of the back pieces out of the back buttocks area where the hip pocket is. Now, before I had it much bigger, I have to always remember that this is going to be folded over a half an inch at the top.
Hold on one second. I'm stuck here. Okay, carry on.
And then I've marked here so I know where my handle's going to go. So I want room for my handles. I want room for that fold over. And then I'm going to have effectively an inch seam allowance here because we're doing would be considered a French seam, so to speak. So I want to make sure I'm at least an inch from the bottom, hopefully more than an inch from the bottom. So I trimmed it all down before I applied it. Now, what I think is fun is when you set that, these are a well-worn pair of jeans. When you set that down on here, you're going to see that it looks like somebody's in them because it automatically takes on the shape that it had when it was worn. So you see that it's kind of three-dimensional here. You want to keep that. So don't flatten it out when you stitch it down. Let it be up a little bit.
Try to turn it around like the opening so I have a better shot of the opening. They see what you're talking about. Yeah, there you go.
So that, you know, and you don't ever want to sew a pocket extremely flat down because you want to be able to use it and put things in it and take them out. But I also think it just adds a very authentic look, like somebody's still in those jeans. So what I did to stitch this down was nothing magical. I just straight stitched it down with that variegated denim thread. And I stitched it twice. Now I straight stitched. If you want, you could do a blanket stitch, any kind of zigzag stitch you like. I straight stitch very close to the raw edge, and then I come back and I stitch again really close to that. I'll turn it over so you can actually see that. You're not getting a good focus?
I got it now. But let me.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I saw a comment come through, and I'm sorry I don't remember who, but they want to know, did you sew the pockets on before or after the lining?
It really doesn't matter. I did it after, but it really doesn't matter. I've done it both ways. I usually top stitch my seams flat before I put the underlining on, but I did that in reverse as well. So I'm going to turn this over so you can see all the stitching, which I think came out pretty good. So you can see that I top stitch those seams down, and then you can see really close together going around that pocket twice, just to try to do the best you can at suppressing any fraying. So you do that with any of the pockets. You know, there's another piece we have here where I put just one big patch pocket. Let's see here. Here we go. So here's the other side of our bag with the pocket on it. And again, now I did reinforce the corners up here, and very likely you're going to need your hump jumper when you're doing this because this is extra thick at the corners. So that might be a place you want to be prepared with your hump jumper. But you're just going to stitch, and you can't even see the stitching on this one. On the outside, I can't see it at all. On the inside, we can see it. It's definitely been stitched down with that variegated thread. Okay, so once we have all of our decorations, we want to work on our handles.
I just want to make sure I didn't miss any comments here.
Okay. You go ahead while I get my machine set.
Okay, I think the picture is better now. Correct, everybody? I know there was a like minute there when we switched that it was a little bit blurry, but I want to make sure that it's better now.
Yeah, hopefully make sure they got a clear view of everything so far. Does anybody need to see anything a second time? Oh,
yeah, it's better. Okay.
All right.
All right. Sorry about that.
All right. So in this particular exercise, I'm doing the handles that attach to the top of the bag, not the handles that will go the full length. So the ones that go the full length, you don't need to do this little treatment, and which is we folded the sides into the center and pressed it. Really gave it a good hard press. And now I want to finish off both ends. So what I'm going to do is open it up and turn it right sides together in the same manner. So we're going to open it up and we'll fold on those same fold lines. And then we're going to stitch 1/4 of an inch according to the pattern guide. Now I told you last week, when you do this, do not clip those corners off. But I've also realized that stitching it at 3/8 is even a little bit better than 1/4. So that's what I've started doing. And when we do the revision version of the pattern guide, I think I will be adding that.
And Linda's wondering, do you put that variegated thread in the bottom as well, in the bobbin?
I do. The thing to know about that variegated thread, Linda, is that it is partially cotton. It's like this, instead of being 100% poly, which is what we're used to. Maybe you can read it, Jess, but I think it's about 60 or 65% poly and the rest is cotton. So this is not as strong as 100% cotton. So sometimes I might switch out just for a solid color, but if I'm top stitching and I don't want that top stitching to show, which usually you do, but in a situation like this we don't, then I'm going to use the variegated. So I'm just going to stitch this across, and again, I'm doing it at 3/8. Your book says 1/4. All that is 1/8 of an inch difference. So it's not going to be a big deal for your handles. So then, I've left my pointer. Well, I got another one here. I'll just take it out.
Unopened notions.
Well, it's easier than walking across the room. All right.
Now you need to buy a new unopened one.
I got another one.
Oh, don't worry, folks. No concerns here.
All right, so we're going to just turn this and keep it as square as possible. And chances are you'll want to go back to the iron and just, get a nice hard press on it. Because denim doesn't like to behave with a press. So that's why I say a hard press. So, in other words, now that wants to kind of peek out, so you get kind of a curve here. So when you apply it, you just want to make sure that it's laying there nice and straight before you start top stitching. But I will go over that in a second. So you do that to both ends, and if you get a nice hard press, you'll have a nice straight, you see?
Whoop, now I see.
Okay, so now we're going to stitch the side bottom pieces to the front and the back of the bag. So remember, the side bottom piece is a long piece that we tell you to construct, and we talk about piecing it if you need to piece it. I only had to piece mine in 2 pieces, so I've got a seam in the center, in the very center, and you can usually do that with 2 pant legs and only have to have a seam in the center. So we're going to take our bag front or back. And we're going to take that side bottom piece. Now I have, just to keep us from spending a lot of time watching me just stitch, I've already applied it to the, let's call this the back, and we'll call this the front. So I've already applied it to the back. So now I'm going to apply it to the front. So it's the same operation. So we want to get this lined up. But before we do that, make sure that you have marked the center of the bottom of the piece you're sewing it to. So I just folded it in half and made a little clip here. I've also marked it with a little pink chalk just to make it easier to see. But this center is going to match because I have a center on my bottom. If you've pieced yours more and you don't have a center piece, then mark the center of your side bottom pieces because you want to match that up. That'll help keep you on track. So we're just going to, now we've pressed these over, but a 1/2 inch for our hem later. But right now, we want them unfolded when we stitch it together. So be sure to unfold that if you've pressed it down a 1/2 inch. And then we're going to stitch this at a barely 1/2 inch seam allowance. Don't get carried away. So remembering to grab a hold of the fabric, thumb under, fingers on top, get those raw edges together, left hand holding everything in place, and now we're going to stitch our 1/2 inch. Now you don't want to stitch like a crazy person real fast because that variegated thread can snap on you. So this is a place where it doesn't matter what thread you use. You could just throw in some polyester navy thread and you'll be good to go. Now before I get all the way to the bottom, I want to measure a 1/2 inch from the bottom. But it's the side bottom piece we clip, not the front and back. So a 1/2 inch from the bottom of this piece, but not clipping this piece, we're going to clip this one. So I'm just going to measure here a 1/2 inch and mark it with my chalkener. And then I have to also measure a 1/2 inch in. Now you see, that's where we're going to make our clip, and we're going to clip the full 1/2 inch because we want to turn a nice square corner. And the only way you can do that is by clipping right to the seam allowance. All right. Now the main thing is once you've clipped this, don't pull on it because you could distort the length of the piece by pulling on it. So keep that clip closed. And you want to come right up to that clip and sink your needle. Okay, and then we're going to turn the corner. So this is where you don't want to pull that clip apart or stretch on it because the clip does have to come apart to create the corner. So you see how that is? Just don't yank it down. It still needs to stay right up there. All right, so then we're not quite where we need to be. There we go. I had to kind of fudge that a little bit, but it won't hurt anything. All right, so we got a clip here, and we have the center of our bag here, and we want them to match, and they do. Now when we get over here, we want to make our 1/2 inch clip a 1/2 inch from here. So again, we're going to measure a 1/2 inch from the raw edge of this in, and that's where we want that clip. And then a 1/2 inch up is where we want to stop that clip. So we're going to give it another clip here. Now, if you're new to pinless sewing or this makes you a little nervous, I would suggest that you pin or clip it at the top, the other end, and maybe in the center to help you stay on track. Okay, and again, same around the corner we go. And again, don't pull that up. It's real easy because it's clipped there. You could pull it up and have an extra ½ inch at the top. You don't want that. So make sure you're keeping your ends together. Okay, so as you can see, we've constructed our bag. Of course, you have to do it to both sides. So we have our bag. Now before we turn it, we want to clip these corners off. So just clip it off.
Oh, okay, you're going to do another one.
I have 4.
Hold on.
So take it on. Hang in there with us, folks. Slight technical difficulties is all.
Okay.
And this is illustrated in your guide as well. So this is nothing different here. But your corners should look like that. Do you see how we caught right at the split? Okay, let's see. I think I've only done 3. There's the other one. Okay, so now we're going to turn this right side out so that we're in the right position to put the hem in. So the hem is at the top, and we don't have to worry much about turning it completely right now. We just want to get this hem in. So, trying to think, do I do this and then... Okay, so we're going to fold that hem over ½ inch. If you haven't pressed it over in advance, then you need to do it now. And that's easiest if you turn... Stitching. Yes. Give me a second. Now I have technical difficulties. There we go. Okay. Now we can stitch. So we're just going to stitch this at about ½ inch. I always seem to have to correct the pressed over area because it just, again, it doesn't want to stay there and be neat. So I correct it as I go. And I'm just temporarily flattening out those seams. It doesn't seem to me it matters one way or the other if you fold them to one side or you press them open, because they're going to be seamed again in the next step. Oh, look at that. That was a little shocking. All right. Okay, we're coming around. Oh, well, a little bit more to go. And I'm just using our basic 3 length, stitch length. And of course the jeans 14 needle. And it does have a little more noise when you're stitching, but it certainly stitches perfectly well and gives a nice stitch. Okay, so now we have the hem on. And this is when I like to do the flange. But you could put the handles on at this point as well. I like to put the handles on last. So I'm going to do the flange. So in order to do the flange, we want to turn everything out nice. Get every corner popped out there. Make sure there's no hole in your corner before you stitch your flange. It's kind of a backwards French seam, actually. We sewed right sides together, and now we're going to sew wrong sides together. In a French seam, you do exactly the opposite of that. All right. So you may want to go to the iron and press this so that it falls right on that edge. I'm just going to finger press it as I go along myself. And this is going to be, again, another 1/2 inch seam allowance. And it, oh, all right, I apologize. Because I skipped a step. And you're really going to want to do this. And I knew immediately that I had skipped it when I went to turn this. So bear with me a sec. We were supposed to trim some of that seam allowance out of the top here, because it gets way too bulky when you try to do that flange. Come on. There we go. This is where I wish I just stitched it at a bigger stitch. I can't even see it to rip it out. Come on. Yes. All right, here we go. So what you want to do, and you'll see it on right here, Jess, page 13. So we're going to just trim that seam allowance down to like 1/8 even.
Can you show? Yeah, I got a glare on the paper. Yeah,
So I'm just cut down. You could cut straight out. It doesn't matter. But you want to cut some of that out of there. Okay, so let me do it to the other side, or I won't be able to keep going. Oh. Yep, this thread is like invisible. Any questions, Jess? You want to check that while I'm doing this? It's going to take me a minute. Comments?
Nope.
All right. All right, I'm going to cut this out. So if you want to show this again, that's fine. So we're going to cut out. And that's just so it's going to be easier to do that flange when we get there. So, all right, let's get back at it. All right, now, and I knew instantly what I had done wrong because it's so thick up there that it will make it hard to stitch through the very beginning here. So getting rid of that bulk makes all the difference in being able to stitch that at a 1/2 inch. And you really want to back up 3 or 4 stitches there at the top because that is a stress point sometimes. Okay, so we're at the 1/2 inch seam allowance. And again, you probably want to press these so you can get that seam out there as even as possible. There we go. Now there's a little trick, so don't look away right now because the trick is at the corners down here. Because in order to create this flange, you cannot just turn and go around the corner. So you're going to want to stop about a 1/2 inch from the bottom, from the seam at the bottom. Okay, so we're going to stop at that mark and back up 2 or 3, 4 stitches. Now, we're going to reposition. It says in the book, reposition. So we're going to grab the bottom seam and reposition. Because we're going to come in here and you're going to have this little dimple right here. A little pleat, dimple, whatever you want to call it. I'll show it to you again at the end. So now we're going to back up as close to this as possible. Now, depending on the machine you have, you may have a hard time getting all the way back there. Don't worry, just go back as far as you can. But it's quite uneven. And if your machine does not like uneven surfaces to sew on, what's so funny?
Well, it made me focus problems, but I had no problem focusing right in on every one of your hairs.
Oh, great. Thanks so much.
But now
Jess.
it won't focus back on the bag.
Huh.
I blame your hair.
Okay. So we're coming along, and what we're trying to do is making sure that we are getting the raw edges of that seam. And see, I didn't catch it all right there. You want that all in there. And you could trim a little bit of the seam off all the way around if you like. Or take a little bit deeper than a 1/2 inch. Either way, and you'll be good. I always like to try to take a slight 1/2 inch the first time around. And then when I go to do the flange, I'll take a heavy 1/2 inch. And sometimes that just does the trick. Otherwise, just trim it out of there. And again, now when we get over here, again, we want to stop a 1/2 inch from that other seam. And definitely back up. Then reposition. All right, you want to, can you focus? Are you focusing yet? Because this would be a good,
The camera or my brain?
the camera.
It was, yeah.
All right, so you see we've stopped here. And now we want to back up and get in there as close as we can. without causing skip stitches. So don't be ridiculous, because it's not that important that you match right where you left off before. You can have a little space in there. Okay, so here's the front of our bag. And you see that what that flange does. It just really gives it a lot of stability. And here, you tell me when I can move it.
You're fine.
So then here's what it looks like on the bottom, which creates this nice square bottom. But this is what happens. You have this little dimple here, or ridge, or fold, whatever. And that's what you want. So make sure that you have that. Okay, so you're going to do that on the other side. So if this was the front of our bag, then you're going to do the same thing on the back of the bag, all the way around. Then we're going to put a handle, one on the front and one on the back. Now, people make the mistake sometimes of putting the handle going from the front to the back. But then that handle is always kind of in your way. If you put one handle on the front and one on the back, you can just flop them out of the way while you're loading your bag. And that's particularly helpful if you're making a grocery bag. So I've got my pre-pressed handle here. And I've already marked it. And we show you where to mark it right here on page 11. However, this is from the raw edge, and if you've already put your half-inch seam allowance in when you measure this, then be sure to take that into consideration, because it's supposed to be 2.5 inches in from the raw edge. So if you've already created that half-inch seam allowance, then you're going to be 2 inches in, okay? And I always mark it before I put the flange in, just so it's done. And then you want to turn your bag again wrong side out to make it easier to stitch your handles on. And so I've already got this marked. Let me darken it up so you can see it. And now we're just going to simply lay the handle in that spot. Now mine is overlapping my pocket a little bit. At that point, you can make the decision to stitch through that if your machine will handle it, or just slide it over and then do the same thing on this side so they're even. I'm going to go ahead and give it a shot to stitch right through it. Now sometimes I use the decorative gold top stitching to do this too, and I think that's what I did on this one. So this is what we're doing. And nothing holds like, and you see this all the time in seat belts and in straps of all kinds, especially for hiking and camping and whatever. You want this square, and then you want the X. That thing will never come off. And that's what you want. You don't want something that you're going to have to repair. So we're going to stitch across the top. I've got the handle just positioned on my chalk marks. And there's probably more efficient ways to create this X than I know, but I just do it my way. you can do it your way. So in other words, I do end up having to stitch over certain things more than once in order not to break the stitching, because that's the other key to something strong, is not stopping and starting but having continuous stitching. So we're going to come across, we're going to make the square. So I just make the square all the way around. There might be a more efficient way, like I said, and if you know it, share it with us. But for me, I just go across around the whole thing, and then I make my X, and if I have to, I do have to go back over some of this stitching. It doesn't matter with this thread because you can't see it anyway. So now I'm just going to angle for this corner. And then you can go across the bottom or up the top, either one that makes sense to you, and then angle for the opposite corner. Now, make sure you don't twist this when you go to put the other one on, because nobody wants to have to do that. Okay, so is this the same distance? No, it's not. So, all right, let me get this. There it is. So now I'm just going to do the same thing here. Now you can use pins to hold these things in place, but it's really hard with denim to get it and not have it distorted by the pins, which almost makes it more difficult. So, of course, you know I don't use pins, but this is usually the way I do it, and just go back up this side and angle to the other corner, and we're done. Then we have one more step with the strap. So don't leave me yet. Okay. I need that. Okay. So, of course I would have done the flange on the other side, and of course we put the straps on the other side. But what I want you to do is mark up, and I believe it's 1.5 inches from the bag before you start. Yes. So I just use a pin to mark it. So I want to come up 1.5 inches here. Get in there. And I want to mark this side 1.5 inches as well. You don't need a pin. You can use chalk, whatever makes you happy. Whatever works for you. But just mark that specific area. All right. So now what we're going to do, I can do this better if it's right side out. So 1.5 inches, we're going to fold this in half, and approximately or just above that pin is where we're going to start to stitch the folded edges of the handle together. And I'm going to stop in a second once I get this in place to make it clear. All right, so you see the handle looks like this. We've stitched it on here, but what we're going to do is we're going to fold it in half to make it even sturdier, and it'll look like these do. So you just want to, and because of the pressing that you did to fold it in half, it should automatically want to fold right there. However, make sure you back up here. Um, just keep those folded edges together and stitch close to the folded edge all the way to the next pin where we've marked the 1.5 inches from the top of the bag. And I chose the 1.5 inches because that's about the closest you can get and still be efficient. And there's really no reason to get any closer anyway. And there it is. Did I run out of bobbin thread? Is that all stitched? Why, yes, I did. Well, luckily I have several more bobbins wound here. I'm stitching away. Hey, who hasn't done that? You get done, you say, oh, that must have come out really nice. And you find out you weren't stitching half the way. Okay. All right, let's finish that off. Try to stay fairly close to that edge because you don't want the thing to be splitting open. Let's see. We got that far enough. Maybe a couple more. Another 1/2 inch maybe. Okay, now our handle is done.
Sure.
Honest. Oh, of course, it's not going to sit up as well because the other side isn't constructed properly yet. But there you have it. So key things is remember to leave yourself some room there. I had this piece of flaw. It had a big flaw in it, this denim in my stash. So I pulled it out and made a bag out of it this weekend. And, oh, I have one more thing I want to show you. But here is that corrugated plastic board we talked to you about. What you want to do is start with the measurement. It tells you on the back of the pattern what size it should be. But let's say that your 1/2 inch was a little bit bigger or a little bit narrower than your piece might need to be. So if you start with that, put it in there, see how it fits. It should be a snug fit, but not extremely tight. And then you want to round the corners off. I just had to repair one. The only thing that was wrong with it after 14 years of using it, was that because I had sharp corners here, they were starting to wear the corners at the bottom of my bag. So that's your, we've tried everything. We've tried so many different products. This one works and never had to replace any. So this is the way you want to go. Now, if you saw the newsletter, you saw that a friend of mine had pointed out others are putting these little straps on the side of their bag so that when you go to the grocery, they sit there and stay open while you load them and it holds it up. So I thought, well, that's perfect for us because guess what? That's a belt loop, right? So I pulled a bunch of belt loops off and I've added them to all of my bags, probably about 15 of them. And so I've got a couple of belt loops here. And if you want to do that, if you're going to use yours for a grocery bag ever, you want to put a belt loop on the center of the side. So now, I would have my flange in. So I have to kind of put that up. Then find the center. And then our favorite marking tool, which is a pin. Then I'm going to center my harvested belt loop. Right where that pin is, just barely below the top of the bag. I went and tested these out yesterday too. And then I do a little rectangle stitching. So we're just going to stitch across the top, come down 2 or 3 stitches, and then stitch across again. And then back up to where you started. And then the same process at the bottom of the belt loop. You don't make it as flat as you can get it. Let it have a little bit of play there. And of course, if you're not doing it out of denim, you can just make your belt loop out of your fabric, like I did. Okay, so then when I come over to the other side, here's the beauty of, we don't have to mark the other side because we just lay this side on top of that side like that. Okay, peel that back and put this one in the same place. Bam, you're ready to go. So you don't have to do all that measuring again. Not that that's a big deal, but every step is saved, is always appreciated. Alright, I'm just going to stitch up this other end and I'll have that done. Okay, now we have the belt loops on for grocery shopping. All right, any questions?
Yes. So I know you talked about this at the beginning, but I think it's important to mention. Linda asks for anybody who didn't see this part at the beginning. Does the denim fray on the handle between where it connects to the bag and is folded over, or did I miss something?
We serged along the long raw edges of the handles before we applied them. So it's not going to fray. But yes, it would fray. And I have some to show that happens. So this one and this one. Here's the
I
difference.
don't have the camera.
Oh, sorry.
Just hold it up.
Okay. So anyway, yes, just this little spot in here could fray. So I just went and searched the whole thing, the raw edge, before we folded it and applied it.
Pam wants to know, are you no longer doing the dart?
Okay, so in the book, there is a dart in the side. If you want your bag to kind of fold like this, where it's got that little...
Like a paper bag?
Yeah, like a paper bag, because it automatically has a crease in it. You can put the dart that's in the book...
Page 15.
On page 15, and it shows you right where to put it and how long to make it. But since I'm putting these belt loops on, I decided to skip the dart. But you could do both. You could do neither. It's your bag. So hopefully you make more than one, because I find them a lot of fun and they're extremely useful.
Patricia wants to know, is there a problem with me selling them if I purchase the pattern? I would only do that with permission.
Absolutely, you go right ahead. I've had other people. I had a mother and daughter in Colorado, and they were doing it for a charity project. Please, just go ahead and do it. Just don't ever tell somebody that you designed the pattern. You're making the bag, and when you make the bag, it's uniquely yours, and you've designed it. But I designed the pattern. So as long as you don't sell the pattern, I'm happy. Sell as many bags as you can make. That'd be great. All right. So we want to quickly just give you a view of our new ITY fabrics. And I'm sorry. Hang on just 1 second. What? Okay. So anyways, before we went on air, we got an email from Mary, and she asked us just to show these real quick. So there they are, and talk about the attributes. So ITY means twisted interlocked yarn. And what that means is when this fabric is created, they twist the yarn as they're weaving it, which creates a springiness to the fabric, and the fabric is cool and easy to the touch. So it is a really nice drape that is created from that process. It's also 100% polyester. And you know, there are some places I don't like polyester, but here I like it. It has such give and such drape, but one of the really wonderful things about it is it won't wrinkle. It will not wrinkle. So you can take these, make up a wardrobe of these t-shirts and throw them in, wad them up and throw them in your suitcase, and when you get wherever you are, there's no wrinkles. You can rinse them out and hang them to dry in your hotel room. And so ITYs are great for all of that, but they also skim the body. So if you make the same t-shirt out of a jersey knit, bamboo rayon jersey knit, it kind of snugs the body a little bit, even not because it's tight, but just because it clings in. This, the ITY, I find doesn't cling in as much. It more skims the body. So if you have a few lumps and bumps that you would rather not be showing off, the ITY helps you camouflage that a little bit, on top of the fact that it's a print. So I hope that helps. I forget, who was it? Mary. Mary asked. So I hope that helps Mary and others. These are beautiful, fun, exciting ITYs. So go in and take a look at our new selection. And I think that's it. I think we gave Jessica a headache today. She's holding her head right now. You can't see her, but
I'm just holding it up.
She's holding it up. Anyways.
I'd sit down, but somebody's in my chair.
The dog stole her chair again. Sarge, Jessica have her chair.
It's fine. I got the camera over here.
So anyway, I hope that you will post pictures of your bags, your double green or single green or not so green. bags. We would love to see what you do with them. The last thing I'm going to tell you is a funny little anecdote. And no one's mentioned it, so I'm glad. But there is a picture in the beginning of the guide where I had created a shopping list right on the bag. It's this one in the middle with a bleach gel pen. And I said, "Oh, I'll show you how to do that." Because I have done that many a times with a bleach gel pen. And I remember going to the store, and I think it was like $8.99 the first time I bought it. And I'm going to guess one time it was 11 something. I thought that was a little high. But, and they don't, once you've opened them, they tend to start to get weaker after a little while. So, anyways, I went to buy one so I could show you, and it was two for $77. I'm not kidding you. Or you could get one for 30, which didn't make any sense. But anyway, I thought, what the heck's going on? Well, apparently, I don't think they're making them anymore because I couldn't find one in the grocery store to save my life. So I had to go to Amazon after hitting 3 or 4 grocery stores. And that's where I found the one for 30 or two for 77. So I'm not going to be showing you that because I don't think you want to spend $30 to draw on your jeans bag. Get some fabric paint. You can do the exact same thing. Some fabric paint and one of those ones that you can write with. So, anyways, that's my story about the gel pen.
All right. We want to say happy birthday to Cassie tomorrow.
Oh yes, happy birthday, Cassie.
She said it to herself, so I figured we could say
Yeah,
it.
yeah, we'll jump on the bandwagon.
All right.
Well, I hope that this was helpful today, and I hope to see some double green shopping bags posted by next week. I mean, it's a doable project. I know you can do it, and you've been collecting your jeans, and you got your thread and your kit. So come on, let me see what yours look like.
All right. Have a great week, and we will see you next Tuesday at
2 o'clock Eastern Time here at Islander Sewing Systems. I'm Janet Fray, and over here is Jessica Johnson and Sergeant Mustachios on the chair. And we've enjoyed our day, and we hope you have a fabulous week. Thanks again.
bye bye.
Bye.